not have been that message. But it's what happened to her book club in the wake of that mess that would foreshadow blogger, author, publisher interactions in the world to come. You know that old Eleanor Roosevelt saying about how no one can make you feel inferior without your consent? It's my belief that Oprah Winfrey respected Jonathan Franzen, respected all writers a lot, when he said, essentially, that her picks were unworthy. That cut deep. 3 books after the corrections, Oprah shuttered the club. When she started it up again, she stuck to the classics, until her disastrous 2006 choice of James Fry, whose memoir turned out to not be what the kids call true. After that egg meets face moment where Fry's publisher, Nan Talese, went on TV to proclaim that readers did not deserve anything better than the appearance of truthiness as opposed to actual truth, Oprah's picks tapered off, becoming once or twice a year events instead of monthly ones. In December of 2010, the club limped off into the sunset with the safest of safe choices, Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations. They had the worst sales of any previous picks, probably because most of us had read them in 10th grade. The book club had become irrelevant. Oprah had become just another critic, marching in lockstep with the Times and the New Yorker, playing it safe, adding her limp, belated Me Too when they heaped laurels on Cormac McCarthy or Jeffrey Eugenides. If Oprah was one of the first book bloggers, then I was one of the first wave of novelists who used blogs to invite readers to step into our parlors and into our lives, to share intimate details about what went on behind the scenes between the books. As an ex-newspaper reporter, someone who typically enjoys human interaction, the chance to talk to readers, to get my words out there and say something in the year-long silence between novels was a thrilling opportunity. I remember going to my publisher and saying, I'm going to start a weblog. Then I remember going to my publisher and explaining what a weblog was. In January of 2002, I launched what was then called Snark Spot. That was my weblog name. And as bloggers did, I treated my life as material. I wrote about my family and my dog, my seemingly endless first pregnancy, my Bradley method birth classes, and taking my mom on book tour, where our publisher would put us up in really nice hotels. My sister and I used to do Mutual of Omaha-inspired voiceovers. When we'd watch my mom sort of like wander through the lobby, and we'd say, the animal out of its habitat in this strange new environment. Let's watch as it approaches the minibar. And my mom would turn around and say, put those Oreos down, girls. Do you know how many cookies you can buy for $5 at the grocery store down the street? Are you blogging this, Jenny? So I put it all out there. I wrote about my family, I wrote about my kids, and some of what I wrote about came from the bad place. Did the world really need a sentence-by-sentence, word-by-word deconstruction of Curtis Sittenfeld's New York Times takedown of Melissa Banks' new novel, which she slammed for being chick-lit? Maybe not. Curtis and I are actually friends right now, so that is actually cool. She reads my books every year, and I read her books every 5 when she writes them. But remember, these were the early days of blogging. The days when you could, indeed, dance like no one was watching. And for me, knowing that books like mine, with naked legs and cheesecake on a pink cover, were unlikely to be hailed as the successor to Salinger or Updike, blogging was a chance to defend myself and my genre. To be a voice that said, in spite of the cutesy covers, the breezy tones, the bad boyfriends and bosses, in spite of the legion of detractors, and eventually an entire anthology challenging my genre's worth, some of those books had something to say. I found my voice, and then along came the New York Times. In 2005, I got a call asking if I'd be interviewed for a story about mothers who blogged. I said, sure. Note to future people who get calls from Times reporters. Beware the reporter who begins his interview by stating, my wife loves your books. Okay, because what that means is, I don't read that shit. Some of you will probably remember the Moms Who Blog story. As it turns out, the Times was not so much a fan of quote-unquote mommy blogs. The headline of the story was Mommy, parentheses, and Me. And in the first few paragraphs, the reporter observed that more often than not, the moms who wrote these blogs were narcissists, and the sites were, quote, shrines to parental self-absorption. Narcissism? Self-absorption? Seriously? I didn't even know I was writing a mom blog. I thought I was writing a blog about being a mother with a job. I thought I was being funny and informative and helpful to the rest of the struggling new moms trying to balance work and family and the inevitable loss of identity that goes along with becoming woman pushing stroller, or these days, woman wearing sling. I imagine I was sort of an Irma Bombeck for the E-age. Then again, I also didn't know I'd been writing chick lit, so it's usually the Times that has to tell me this stuff. Then, in the summer of 2005, just before the film version of In Her Shoes came out, the paper sent a reporter to my house in Philadelphia to do a profile of me for the Sunday magazine. I cannot tell you how excited I was. Even though the reporter they sent was better known for her hit pieces than her Valentines. This meant they thought I was interesting. Oh my God, maybe it would be one of those pieces that would make everybody want to read my books. They like me. They really, really like me. Long story short, not so much. The Times didn't think I was interesting as much as I was a symptom of what it saw as literature's wrong turn. A turn toward social media and public connection as opposed to artistic isolation and dignified silence. I can only recall bits and pieces of my day in the reporter's company. My subconscious has helpfully blocked most of it out. But there are things that I do remember. Like the reporter wandering through my bedroom, picking up a photograph of my sister, considering it with a sneer and saying, well, she's not that pretty. I thought that was you. Okay, those of you who've seen or read In Her Shoes know that it's about these two sisters, and one is very good looking and one not so much. So I was standing there thinking, you just insulted the fuck out of both of us. I remember her asking me over lunch, do you write your blog so that people will like you? And oh, if I'd just been the tiniest bit quicker, I would have said, no, silly. That's what the blowjobs are for. Did my publisher leave yet? Blowjobs, yeah. Okay. Bottom line, as the day went on, and there were 10 questions about my blog for everyone about my books, it became apparent that the piece was not going to resemble the paper's 4,000-word mash note to Jonathan Safran Foer, that it wasn't said going to be something that I regretted, possibly for the rest of my life. When I told the reporter that we were done, that I wasn't going to sit for the portrait and there wasn't going to be a story, she was furious, complaining bitterly about the time she'd, quote, wasted traveling to Philadelphia and reading my books, which erased pretty much all the doubts I had about what the story was going to be like. No one can hurt your feelings without your permission. I gave the New York Times permission. And I should maybe give you a little background about this part of the speech, because when I told like my agent and my best friend and my publicist I was going to talk about this, they're like, maybe you should just say a large northeastern newspaper. You know, because if they piss off the Times, they're going to like take it out on your next book, which is, it's called The Next Best Thing, and it comes out July 3rd. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, what else can they do to me? What other painful, embarrassing thing can happen? Can they have Henry Alford say something bitchy about me in the style section? Oh, that happened. Can they quote Jonathan Galassi, who is Jonathan Franzen's editor, making fun of my made-up German? Oh, that happened too. Can they misrepresent my sales on their bestseller list? Well, this week, my current paperback, Then Came You, is the #8 best-selling trade paperback on Bookscan, which is said to account for 70 to 80% of all sales. And for the same time period, it's #22 on the Times list. And I know what will happen, because this is what happens with every book ever since 2005. My publisher will go to the Times and say, we think Jen's book should be higher on your list, and here are our numbers supporting this claim. And the Times will say, we think Jen's book is right where it should be, and we're not showing you our numbers, they're proprietary. And there's nothing to be done, and I don't expect any better. A sale is a sale, and as long as I know that people are reading my books and enjoying them, I really can't do much about what the Times says or where they put them on their list, even though it sort of is a bummer. But, you know, anyone who's taken a women's studies class can tell you this. As long as there's a woman who writes about her own life, There's someone, sometimes a man, sometimes another woman, sometimes an entire institution. It's there to tell her that what she's written is unworthy, unimportant, beneath notice, not real literature, not worth taking seriously.